I really encountered it when I was exploring the possibilities of being transgender dyke, to identify as a woman and to see to what extent I might be included in dyke spaces in San Francisco. And, my end thought was, not very. It could not be really included in dyke spaces. And one thing that, I had a whole series of losing faith in that, in that ability, really hard experiences with dyke culture. But, one of them that just sent me over the edge, I did some really angry blogging somewhere, which you can't actually find on my WordPress blog. I'm kind of happy about it. If you dig deep enough, you might find it, my rage. But, I went through a period where I just realized I was really, time after time, just really being treated badly in those spaces, of dyke, kind of friends, pretending they didn't know me. And, when I would talk to femme dyke friends or genderqueer dyke friends, that some other dyke would start cock blocking, they would eject me. And that hurt. That hurt really bad. But, one of the other things I realized, I was just building up this rage, and I realized that every time that I talked to, lesbian feminists about it, something weird would happen, is that they were unable to see it from my viewpoint. That it almost seemed like if there was a disagreement between me and a lesbian, I could never be right. That it just can't be right that you could have victim and you could talk about me being the victim and a lesbian being the oppressor. It almost seemed like part of lesbian separatist identity politics was, the woman is always the victim. That I, as a male, I just have to, get used to that. I'm the oppressor. It doesn't matter if I'm transgender. And that's kind of the limits of those kind of identity politics, of this really strongly, essentially defined, idea of who's an aggressor and who's not. And I'm always the aggressor because I'm a man. And and then I found it recently with this whole thing of this cissexual, transsexual thing, that there's a transsexual identity politics going on right now, very much inspired, I think, by Julia Serrano's book, of defining, transsexual as always the victim. The transsexual, and part of the saying that there's no choice there. So transsexuals are the oppressed, and then putting these really clear, trying to make these really clear definitions of who's the oppressor and who's not. So we get this word cissexual, which is the oppressor, and the transsexual is the victim. And unfortunately, the way this line is being drawn is because I don't want to transition, I become a cissexual. So cissexual is the word for those who choose not to transition. And again, we're erasing choice here. So I didn't choose. I'm just another kind of species than transsexuals, of course. But I've really noticed this in a blog, recently, where I was trying to, talk about this cisgender privilege and cissexual privilege. And I used the phrase, let's put, I'm glad that this person had written something because I wanted to have cissexual privilege and cisgender privilege on equal footing. So I was talking about this privilege that a transsexual would have of passing privilege would be on equal footing with my cissexual privilege. But the thing that is they went berserk. The people in that forum went totally berserk because they saw the word they saw this word sexual and cisgender and some equality. I was talking about equal footing. I wasn't even talking about equality. But this idea that I didn't recognize this hierarchy of victimization was enough just to, Queen Emily, from questioning transphobia, just went totally berserk. And then she did something that I've actually seen analyzed in this kind of politics of outrage, where she then used as her argument the piles of bodies of trans women, that how could I, argue with that image, and it's kind of like, using image of the Holocaust or the image of African Americans coming over on slave ships to make, this visceral emotional point. But, I thought it was very interesting is that, suddenly, they defined me as cissexual, and then suddenly I'm not even allowed to talk about, relative, privileges that they might have versus what I might have. So it's, so this article I ran into was talking about victim feminism, which I think is unfortunately underlying some of the lesbian separatist ideas of victimization. But now we're getting victim transgender and in some sense victim transsexual, because there's this hierarchy of victimization where transsexuals are more victimized than people who choose not to transition. So let's see. I'm going to put this up on the web. Let's see how this one flies. Okay, good night.